What is home? Home is protection, comfort, and warmth. It's the place where we rest, but it's also the place where we can find ourselves. And music is, I think, the closest we can get to recreating this feeling. We can find in music a space that we can call home. But what does this sound like? Jacob Collier's Home Is, from Djesse Volume 1, gives us a sense of his musical home, realised through the harmonic journey that the piece takes us on. It begins with pure, universal harmony, an open fifth sung wordlessly by voces 8. But instead of being a day equals 440, he begins the piece a day equals 429 Hz, nearly 44 cents, close to half a semitone, lower than we would hear it if played on a piano. The piece is looking inwards at the beginning, pre-dawn as Jacob puts it, but it begins to open up. He does this by introducing a D major tonality built from voices that move outwards from the central supporting perfect fifth. And after this, silence. As important as the notes in this piece, a canvas of silent stars on which the music is painted. Jacob continues to build up these contrary motion lines, leading to a crystalline cluster of notes that come into focus as we move into the perfect cadence in bars 6 and 7. And in the soprano part, we see 2 arrows pointing downwards on the major thirds. This is Jacob asking the singers to sing these notes 14 cents flat, slightly lower than an equally tempered major third, giving us pure, justly tuned chords. The music continues to expand. We hear more movement in every part, including the first use of the word home, with the singers leaning on the aspirate H at the beginning of the word. This section also moves us, momentarily, away from D major, with our first example of modal interchange. We hear a C natural in the altos, but the harmony quickly returns to where it began, back to our perfect cadence in D major, retreating inwards again. But we now get our first radical move away from D major. Jacob uses the open fifth to pivot to an E mixolydian cluster via a chord that feels like a negative harmony version of the equivalent chord in D major, a deep quench. The perfect fifth continues, and using a similar progression to the previous 2 bars, we end up on a dense second inversion A major cluster chord, with the singers closing on the M of home. Breathe in. Once again, the parts push outwards, and the D mixolydian harmony returns with the C natural surrounded by D major. But the music feels like it's restricted in this tonality, like it can't get to where it wants to go. So it needs to try something else. We hear a chord based on a B-flat 9 sharp 11, which moves into an E major cluster chord with the E natural sustained on top. The music continues to try and find a new harmonic world to explore. It does this first by shifting back and forth between 2 earthy major chords placed low down in the choral texture. E major followed by C sharp major, pivoting around the G sharp. But this note, the G sharp, is the major third in one chord and the fifth in the next. And so, in order to keep the singers in just intonation, the note moves from 14 cents flat in one chord to 2 cents sharp in the next. These chords, like almost every other chord in the piece so far, are based around sharp accidentals and sharp keys. But we next hear our first flat key. The music moves enharmonically from C sharp major into A flat major. You might not even notice the enharmonic change here, given that the use of harmony is very similar to what we've heard before. But in this flat key, it feels different somehow, occupying a new space within the emotional landscape of the piece. We also hear, for the first time, the words "home is," but in this context, this feels like a question. What is home? And underneath the texture, very quietly, Jacob answers, where the heart is. But this A-flat major harmony only exists transiently. The music moves back into sharps, again pivoting enharmonically, but this time via the soprano E-flat or D-sharp. It is difficult to understand the language of the first chords in these pair of bars. They're a sort of G13 sharp 11 underneath a G augmented triad. But we can understand the chords as ways of getting us to the F-sharp major tonality that follows them. Through tightly controlled voice leading, Jacob has moved us again into another harmonic world. But it hasn't reached its home yet. The music collects itself, and via B dominant 7th, we move into E minor. Then back into D major with the introduction of C sharps in the bass. The bass part moves in stepwise motion downwards, with the soprano part climbing in the opposite direction towards the highest notes in the piece. But this is not the highest it can go. We get a sudden shift up nearly half a semitone into A equals 440 for a D Lydian burst of light. The music has finally opened up, finishing with a multi-layered chord based around the same perfect fifth that began the song. This is home. Thank you so much for watching. I'm very grateful to Voces 8 for providing the score for me to analyse for this video. If you don't know their work, you should definitely go and listen to their recordings straight away. If you like this video, then do take a look at my 2 other videos on Jacob Collier and join my Patreon to get early access to all of my videos and for behind-the-scenes content. This video, like all of them, is brought to you by the kindness and generosity of my supporters on Patreon, so thank you so much to them. See you next time.